So people say, oh, it's so altruistic of you. Oh, it's so selfless of you. But I don't feel that way. I'm not losing anything. It's almost a very selfish thing because I get a reward for it and I get the reputation of being this very kind person.
Back in my mind, it's like, yeah, you're still my good friend, but you're contributing to this, organization that's, feeding diabetes, and then in talking to him, like what he's doing, and he believes that the trend is more towards healthy drinks that taste good, more the kombucha, sparkling water, things like that, and so he's kind of encouraging Coca-Cola to head more in this direction.
Nothing like your own experience will convince you. Like you can have all the data and all the research saying whatever, but until you experience it, it doesn't really hit home the same way.
I think there's a bit of a psychological shift too. If you feel like if you're depressed, you don't feel good, you feel like some emptiness inside, and then when you're giving to others, it's like, okay, I do have something inside of me. I have to have something abundant where I can give to others.
Right. And then to become aware of your body, aware of your emotional stressors, taking space in like different types of muscular tension, right? Is it your jaws, your neck, your shoulders? Is it that you hold your tension in your belly? Where do you hold it?
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brain Chats. With me today, we have Dr. Janani Dhinakaran. She is a PhD in neuropsychology, a master's in neuroscience, and she's a health coach. So I can't think of anyone better than her to really combine the concepts that are good for the brain and can have you thinking and feeling better and less likely to develop Alzheimer's with actually implementing these into your daily routine so you can truly reap these benefits and be at your best. So thanks for joining, Dr. Janani. How are you feeling today?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I'm Dr. Stephen Cain, president of the Whole Brain Health Initiative, and the topic for today is emotional health and how it relates to brain health. So I think one of the first things we could talk about is the difference between transient emotions and feelings and some of these more long-term sustained pathologies such as depression. So, Dr. Jenny, can you start off just kind of explaining the difference between these two?
Yeah, so you can have good days and bad days as a person who doesn't have a diagnosis of depression, anxiety, or trauma. So when you have transient emotions, it's very short term and it's influenced by your external environment. So what happens directly evokes certain emotions. So those tend to come and go. They are not necessarily in a they don't tend to have like any major long-term effects on the brain, and that's just part of the human experience. But states like depression, anxiety, or trauma actually tend to be more long-term, and they're not always influenced by direct external stimuli that happen right then. So the reasons why people have these, it really ranges. So it's not like anyone is very clear on, is it just biochemical imbalance or is it caused by attachment wounds and from childhood and unmet needs. So there are a wide range of possibilities to explain the cause of these mental illnesses. There's also the genetic factor that predisposes some to go through these more than others, and an inborn sensitivity for some and not some others, right? So we need to look at it in terms of make that distinction between transient emotion that you feel every day, happy, sad, angry, anxious, whatever, to the more pathologically defined states of depression, anxiety, or trauma. So, and these can have pretty long-lasting effects physically, tend to translate into structural and functional changes in the brain. So I just wanted to go over some of the facts that relate depression and Alzheimer's or dementia, because I think that when I read about this, it strikes me as just amazing how much they have in common. For example, people with depression are twice as likely to develop dementia later in life. 40% of people with Alzheimer's also experience depression, indicating a strong link between mood disorders, and neurodegenerative diseases. Both depression and Alzheimer's are associated with reduced hippocampal volume, hippocampus being the region of the brain that's responsible for memory. And this affects memory and cognitive function. And chronic emotional distress leads to increased cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone. And that can accelerate the beta amyloid plaque accumulation, which is one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. And the other thing that I thought was kind of fascinating is that depression and Alzheimer's share a common neurotransmitter disruption. So, particularly serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, which are used in regulating mood and cognition. So these tend to kind of bring together just how connected they are, and they're not two separate things, but they really do affect each other in a significant way. So when you're discussing dementia prevention, discussing this is actually important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And one of the things I found pretty interesting is that obviously there's a big overlap between them that you just mentioned in terms of the similarities between them. Also, another similarity is the things that are beneficial, the things that are preventative against the Alzheimer's are very similar to the things that are can help improve our mood, improve our emotional regulation. So maybe you can shed some insight on that as well. What are some of the strategies, some things people can do to improve whether it's the transient emotions or maybe improve their depression scores as well as help prevent against Alzheimer's?
Yeah, so the first thing I would highlight is the role of physical activity. So I don't think people recognize just how powerful exercise can be, but it is as effective as antidepressants if you're exercising for mild to moderate depression. So in 12 weeks, you can see a 47% reduction in symptoms. This is done in a study from 2000. And so that is not a small benefit. And a lot of
Hmm.
people don't respond to the medication, or they suffer major side effects from those medications. So if, for example, if someone is able to use exercise to see such a reduction in their depression symptoms, then that would be the safe go-to first step. And then, of course, if you need more support after that, your doctor would be able to figure out how to help you with that. But if you're not exercising, that's the first thing you can do to help. And this, as you said, it affects your brain cognition as well as your mood.
Absolutely.
Um,
Since exercise is such an important element, how would you, if you would elaborate a bit more, like how would someone think about an exercise regimen that's ideal for them, that's going to help with whether the depression or preventing against Alzheimer's, like maybe what types or how often, or what would you, if you would give a little bit more, structure around that, what would you say?
So I think that there are many forms of exercise well, there's such a variety that you can choose the ones that you like the most. So, for example, if you like to dance, go and join a Zumba or aerobics or whatever else which makes you happy, or a Bollywood dance, right? And there's so many of these that will give you the benefits of the exercise along with an activity you already like. So some people like hiking, gardening, outdoor activities like cycling. And then there are other people who find the same benefits with just going for a walk around the block, or getting on the mat for yoga. So hitting the gym, any of these will still have it. So it's more about making sure that your circulation is kind of pumped up with some exercise.
Uh-huh.
You get the blood moving, you get the system flowing, and that, I mean, it's really like, what do you like to do?
Uh-huh.
And that's what you're going to stick to. If you don't like the gym and you're like asked to get on the treadmill for like 20 minutes, half an hour every day, you're not going to keep that habit for too long. If it's just a chore, so find something you like and do it. I think that would be the most important. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially for people that are depressed, because I know their motivation is low and they're thus apt to want to get up and go do that. So, that definitely, I'm sure would make it much easier for them to get the ball rolling with that. I know me personally, just in terms of my mood, my emotional regulation, that when I do a good number of short bouts of exercise throughout the day, if I go real intense for an hour or two, and then I'm tired for the hour or two, and that flow doesn't seem to work as well. But if I do just short 5 minutes, go get outside, get some fresh air, jog a little bit, do some push-ups. That is just kind of it tends to keep my emotional state a bit higher, and especially the past several weeks, I've been going without any caffeine, without any stimulants, and I found that exercise has
Hmm.
been the best thing to keep my spirits, keep my energy higher. And I presume that the same concept, could help other people if they're feeling like their energy is low, their motivation is low, and if they see it as just a small, like, just get outside and just walk for a couple minutes. You don't have to put yourself through pain. You don't
Hmm.
have to really make it it's an unenjoyable experience in just a little bit. And if you just do that a handful of times throughout the day, I wonder if that could be a better approach for most people. And what they normally think of exercise is go to the gym, personal trainer for an hour, just kind of push through it, even if you don't necessarily like it. And also,
Right.
and more convenient too. You don't have to drive to the gym. You just get outside and go for a walk, and or whatever's enjoyable. Turn on the music and dance around for one song. Just something. Just those kind of hitting that button multiple times throughout the day. I kind of get the feeling for a lot of people, especially if they just don't have that motivation to get up and exercise, might be a good way to think about it. Um,
Actually, there are people who've said, I think there's a book in which I read that even 2 minutes of walking around every half an hour really does make a difference in
okay.
terms of the way your brain works. So, 2 minute walk every half an hour isn't like a lot, actually. That's just like going to get some water or going to the bathroom or, going to chat with someone down the hall or whatever. So, it can be very small pockets of activity
Uh-huh.
that get you going on that front. But movement is what we're built for. We're built for that, and the more we do it, the better we feel. We're actually built for more movement and less mental activity. And when we reverse that, it doesn't do us much good.
Yeah.
So just moving around actually helps. And I think a change of scene, being in nature, or connecting with socially with other people as you do it. Like there's a study that shows that I think in the UK that a lot more people show up when it's a group exercise class rather than when you have to do it alone.
Okay.
So that's also a motivation to keep people going, and they enjoy it not just from the exercise perspective because you don't notice that you're moving around when you're socializing in the process of it. You're like, okay, here's this group energy, so you get a lot more from that.
Yeah.
Actually, that brings me to something else that I think you pointed out when we were talking about this before is that emotion regulation works better when you do mindfulness meditation together as opposed to doing it alone. I think there's a
Yeah.
37% increase, didn't you say?
I believe so.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
stat.
Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing
Yeah,
it now. Yeah. 30. Yeah. Yep.
yeah.
Creswell in
So that
2000.
again speaks to the power of a group. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of tying back into the common, or that they both are associated with a shrinkage of the hippocampus, memory center of the brain. I've seen a handful of studies that have all shown that at the very least in seniors that have already experienced some hippocampal degeneration, it's gotten smaller, that they walk half an hour 5 times a week over the course of a year, and it grows. The hippocampus gets bigger by about 1.5 to 2% a year, which is roughly about the average rate at which it tends to shrink in seniors. So that's
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah. Exercises enhances neuroplasticity and supports the growth of new neurons, particularly in the hippocampus. So that's also part of the studies. I think this is the same one that I read too. Yeah.
yeah. And when I delved a little bit deeper into research, I found that it's the initial movement seems to have the greatest effect. There was this kind of graph in terms of the benefits. I can start exercising, then maybe after maybe 30 to 60 minutes a day, when you start doing this, it starts to kind of level off. There's still a little bit more incremental benefits, but it's the just getting going. That's where the greatest benefits are. And then you get a little bit more. And the CDC recommends about 150 minutes of cardiovascular exercise a week plus two strength training
Yeah.
sessions. So it's not
Right.
you think about throughout the entirety of a week, it's not a ton of volume that you have to get in to get the vast majority of these neurological, neurodegenerative preventative benefits. So I really hope people that are that have a gloomy kind of outlook on what's going to happen if they're not already exercising, that they're just 15, 20, 30 minutes away from a state of mind, from a future that'd be much more special. So I really hope people take that home.
Yeah, agreed. I know people, I know it for myself as well, that this is extremely effective. So if you have doubts about its effectivity, just try it and you'll know. I mean, and nothing like your own experience will convince you. Like you can have all the data and all the research saying whatever, but until you experience it, it doesn't really hit home the same way. So try it. And like when you're feeling blue, just go out and do something, or go home and do something and physical, and you'll see the difference. You'll feel it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about physical exercise is one of the best ways to help both prevent neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and to improve our mood and emotional regulation. Outside of physical exercise, what would you say is the next thing people ought to consider?
So I want to emphasize mindfulness and meditation here because studies have shown that just 10 minutes of meditation per day, which isn't a lot, can reduce the activity in the amygdala, which is the fear center in the brain. And that reduction in activity is like 30%, which is quite a lot of reduction. And that actually leads to a lower stress response. So that actually speaks to the power of, because I never understood this until I started to read the literature and also then practice just how powerful meditation can be. And the people around you will feel it just as much as you do. So they'll notice, oh, you're doing something different. You seem calmer. Yeah, so this makes a difference. And then, like we said before about group-based mindfulness, tends to increase your emotion regulation abilities. So not only do you not feel those same blues, but when you do, you can regulate it better if you've been in a group setting doing mindfulness. And mindfulness also lowers cortisol. And we talked about cortisol and the role of inflammation in protecting the brain from damage from chronic stress. So I think the mindfulness aspect, there's quite a lot of studies now. I mean, traditionally, a lot of cultures have their own contemplative exercises. So even if you're not too keen on mindfulness itself, doing one of the other things that may be more speaks to you from your culture, but still it kind of goes along the same lines of kind of sitting quietly and not dwelling on the activity of the brain, but just being, right? So I think that would be quite effective too. Any thoughts on that, Steve?
Yeah, I think we should definitely go into this a bit more, and especially that the cultural thing that you mentioned. What's culturally sound for the person. I think that's something that, because a lot of people just hear the word meditation and they go, yeah, not for me. That's woo woo whatever. I'm not into that. But if you phrase it as um, just going for a walk and looking at the lake, or maybe something that's just a bit different, or something that resonates with people. Maybe you can try to. Are you aware of different cultural, I guess, terminology, or different kind of, if you were to differentiate this concept of meditation, and try to spin it off in different cultural contexts? How would you go about doing that?
I would just say, in your own culture, what is the contemplative practices that exist? And if and there would be a big umbrella of them because every single culture has it. It's just about, and I think there's also like maybe this is like a pet peeve for me, but mindfulness has been kind of removed from its original culture in the scientific studies. So you will not necessarily see acknowledgement or credit given to the Buddhist community for developing this technique or practicing it and keeping it alive for thousands of years. So people who have taken it into the scientific literature have deliberately sterilized it from anything that could tie it back to its origins, which in some ways is called cultural appropriation. But I think if they give credit where credit is due and say, these are the practices from this area, this place, but you don't have to do the rituals, you don't have to believe anything else, just do the practice, but know that it comes from here. Because, like, say, for example, pizza is from Italy. Like, we know this, right? But a lot of people believe that pizza is an American food. And that is like, where did that notion come from, right? So similarly, yoga has now taken on unrecognizable forms in the US, where it is so far removed from the original practice, which combines the physical, the posture, relaxation techniques, breathing techniques, meditation techniques. All of these together make yoga. But if you see any yoga studio well, most yoga studios in the US, they don't care about relaxation or breath work or meditation or chanting or any of the other aspects. It's just posture and some breathing that goes with posture. So you take something that has this larger context and then you take one part away from it, you decontextualize it. There's something wrong with that. And then you say that's yoga. That's not yoga. That's just the asana aspect, right? So I think connecting back to where does it come from and having some openness to say this is what people did 2,500 whatever years ago in some northern western parts of in the Indian subcontinent. And now it's like we've explored this through science and we've seen what are the various benefits that it can have. So now science is telling you, do it because it's good for you. The scientific community likes to give authorship and acknowledgement to everyone who's contributed to the ideas on a paper, and that needs to extend to the culture. Buddhism is not necessarily a religion. It is actually a set of practices, and you can just use it. It's like a gift to the world. Please benefit, please use it and feel better. Why can't you be open to something that comes from somewhere else? Why does it always have to come from your own backyard? We're all the same species. We have various different ways of looking at things. So why not benefit from, like, it's not like people in various parts of the world don't benefit from modern science. And it's not like modern science exists in those places, in like the fancy labs and the cool equipment and the expensive infrastructure doesn't exist everywhere. But aren't we all happy to take meds when we need it? So why can't we give credit and use it? Why does it have to come from only your own culture?
Yeah,
That's my question, right?
I get your point, and I guess I feel that sometimes people it's just how they are, while it might be ideal for them to take in and just try something new and get into it. I think that especially when people are maybe in a bit more depressed, or they just don't have as much energy or motivation to venture out into the unknown or something they're not even remotely familiar with, that they might maybe at least as a starter want to do something that there's at least some familiarity with. So I understand both sides of the coin here. It'd be great to really immerse yourself in the true, authentic, thing that has been, tried and trusted for thousands of years, fully developed and refined in a way that's just that for sure it's a special thing and it's going to help, versus something that's a modern new age kind of spin off, or somewhat somehow connected. But so I get them both, but I'm hoping that the viewers can at least have some sort of next step, that they know what they can do. Maybe it's just go right for it and try a Buddhist meditation approach, or if that's just not something they're going to do just for whatever reason, it is what it is. Maybe there's something that a bridge or something they can try in the meantime.
I think there's plenty out there in terms of there are many now American Buddhist teachers who've actually immersed themselves into the study of the culture and the practices, and then put themselves in scanners, also like MRI scanners. So there's a lot of, and that's the nice thing about the Buddhist traditions, is that they've moved enough into modern science that there are practices like MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction. So the person who introduced mindfulness into this clinical practice gets a lot of credit for clinicalizing it. And there's been enough research to say, okay, if you have chronic pain, go to one of these classes and you will learn the techniques that will help you, right? And that's fine. I think it's good to do that. But at some point, the person who practices in benefits is going to wonder, where did this come from? And if they wonder and they get the answer that, okay, this came from a scientific paper, and they stop there, they're not going to have access to the rest of the context.
Okay.
Right. And I think that's the part which worries me, because there's so much more that comes from that culture that can also be beneficial. And it would be good to see it for what it is, all connected together from the holistic picture, rather than just, okay, I see MBSR, I see non-sleep deep rest, right? Wasn't that the other one we talked about last time?
Yeah.
And like these things are not related, but they are, right? Yoga Nidra comes from the same culture that gave you MBSR, right? So I think it's useful to know that they are connected somewhere, so that you can use that as a pathway to get further into it and say, all of these practices helped me. And there are people like Mark Epstein, and I think he's the one who comes to me first, because he's both a psychiatrist and he writes a lot about Buddhism in terms of the psychology. And so, like, there are people like him who have popularized those concepts and brought it into the context of something that is culturally palatable even to Americans, and therefore the larger Western audience also. So a lot of good work has been done. So it's not like, oh, there's like this big smoking ritual blah blah thing that goes with it anymore. Not since the 80s, I think, or maybe 70s. So there's a lot of this type of stuff available, and the Americans have done a great job of bringing it to the public in ways that it's more practical and useful and usable. So that's like great. That's great. Just don't forget to give acknowledgement. That's all I'm saying.
We'll definitely do that in this podcast here. In our description here, we're going to make sure we get that. Uh, so we've talked about physical exercise, talked about mindfulness, meditation. What else? Where else should people look if they want to really preserve their brain health and also combat depression, or what else?
So there is another one which is gratitude journaling. And
Okay.
this is an interesting one because it's something that I use often with people within my classes as well as one-on-one practice. And it says that writing in a gratitude journal for 3 weeks increases positive emotions by 25% and reduces depression symptoms by 35%. And the study is from 2003. So the reason that it's interesting for me is that people think about gratitude as something you feel. I'm actually of the opinion, and I look at it more as, where do you pay attention? Because how you feel is based on where you pay attention. So if you're doing this journal, it's not so much that you're supposed to write down the things that you feel so great about, because if you felt that way, you probably wouldn't need to do it, right? So the practice is, can we pay attention to what's going well, what's going right in life, in our surroundings, and bring that into focus and put more energy into thinking about the things that are going well,
Yeah.
and therefore leave a little bit less space for all the things that are not going well. So, and I think if you're able to shift that, so it's kind of like the people say this, Teflon for bad emotions and Velcro for good emotions is what you're aiming for. But usually people have the opposite type of tendency. They focus on the things that didn't go well and how can you be
Yeah.
more perfect, right? So I think gratitude journaling actually comes to as a technique that shifts your attention, and I think that's why it works. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I remember hearing a quote that what you focus on expands, and if you want your mindset, your feelings to expand around the good things in your life versus the things that are not great in your life, yeah, that makes sense 100%. Do you feel that there's a certain, so let's say someone does gratitude journaling, let's say prior to that. I don't know, they're depressed, and 98% of their thought process is, life's not good. There's these things that I want that I don't have, and then they start gratitude journaling. Let's say they take, I don't know, 15 minutes a day, and they go from, let's say, 98% to 96% of their mind, the thought process is shifted in that direction towards, a little bit more. Do you think there's a certain, I don't know, threshold or volume or, I guess, kind of therapeutic dose of shifting your attention towards things that you're grateful for?
I would have to look into the study that published this finding to say exactly how much did they do. Was it like 3 times a day, or was it three things once a day in the end of the day? So that would
Uh-huh.
be in the methodology section of that paper. But I think that there is, this is something that I experienced firsthand sometime in 2019 or 20, where I was part of this, what they called an abundance workshop. And they ask you to write about, like, write a list of all the people who have contributed to your life in any positive way. And so you start with, and as many as you can, like 50 or so, right? So in the beginning, it's just, yeah, okay, I'm doing this, yeah, yeah, yeah. But by the time you hit like 30th or maybe 40th person, you're starting to kind of relive a lot of the wonderful things that have happened and a lot of the good things that people have contributed into your life. And you start to recognize how lucky you are and how wonderful life has actually been, how fortunate you've been on various aspects of life. And so by the end of the exercise, even though you've just written a bunch of names, your mental state, just in that, what, maybe it took me 10 minutes to do that,
Uh-huh.
it shifted,
Yeah.
radically shifted. And if I made that a habit every day, I can imagine that I would be living in a completely different mental state than if I didn't do it. Because that's, again, remembering all the things that have worked out. I have never been hungry in my life. That's really something to be grateful for,
Yeah.
right? I have never experienced, okay, so there's a bunch of things. I've never been in a war. I've never been blah, 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 right? So there's so many things that have not gone wrong, but there have been so many things. I've known peace. I've known prosperity. I've known all these comforts, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a small thing. And usually people try to say, okay, well, think about the people who don't have these things so you feel better about yourself. But that doesn't work for everyone, because when you think about the people who don't have it, you feel bad for them. So
Right.
I don't know if that really necessarily makes you feel better about what you have. But yeah, I think that it can happen within 10 minutes. And if you do, if this becomes a habit on a daily basis, then it can shift your emotional habits and patterns into something that completely doesn't resemble what it is before. So
Okay.
I think it can be quite powerful.
Okay. Yeah, and if you do come across any particular research on like the volume or the total amount that goes into this, we can definitely put that in the description below.
Sure.
Because that's something that I've thought about. I personally have done gratitude journaling, and it's I guess I've kind of had mixed feelings about it. Maybe I haven't done it long enough, but I know if I want something that's going to be like in a couple minutes, like I can just about guarantee I'm going to be in a better state of mind. I feel like doing a gratitude journaling for me is not as impactful as getting outside and exercising for a little bit. And I know working as a chiropractor, I'm working with patients, and I'm trying to learn more and understand more about their condition. And there's a certain point where it's like um, just just talking or just thinking about things, it's like they're kind of tapped out. So, okay, they need to feel someone's hands. Like just talking or thinking is not the right input that they need at the time. They need something, a different kind of sideways approach to get them into a better state of mind. Uh,
I completely agree. In fact, just this morning when I was thinking about this upcoming podcast that we're going to do, I was thinking about the role of a massage
yeah,
and how necessary physical touch is. Because we, as social creatures, we need touch. And
yeah,
there were times where I felt hug deficient way before, like 2010-ish, so to maybe like 14. or so, where there's a, like, you don't hug people enough to feel a sense of connection. And that can be like deeply distressing to a social animal, especially an
Yeah.
extrovert. So I think that it's important to have physical touch, and that's one of the basic needs for us. There was someone that I was working with a while ago who said, you know, when I was giving birth, the nurse was massaging me, and that's the most affectionate touch that I've received for the last maybe since I was a child. And I was thinking, wow, that's drastic. That's really like really painful. Just hearing that was really painful for me because affectionate touch is really important. And the skin, there's this thing called skin hunger or hunger from for affection, for touch hunger, not skin hunger.
Okay.
So they're especially babies. They really need to be held and cuddled and tickled and touched, and that is such an important part of their upbringing. Just like the mice that lick each other are happier than the mice that are not licked. I think there's a study about that.
Okay. Okay.
Oh yeah, the mothers. This is an epigenetics study. The mothers who lick their pups raised them to be happier, and those licked pups tend to be better mothers than the ones who were not licked, who were separated from the mother.
Okay.
And so they continue that behavior that results in positive moods. And that's an epigenetic change that happens that you can pass on to the next generation. So that, yeah, what you said about touch, it really, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we got exercise, we got mindfulness, we've got touch. What what else are we should we is a very essential thing for people to consider here?
Volunteering. So social connection and volunteering. I think, like we were talking about being social creatures, we
Uh-huh.
really need each other. And studies have shown volunteering at least once a week has been linked to a 22% increase in overall emotional stability and reduced anxiety.
Okay.
And the social bonds, and they increase the oxytocin and serotonin, which support well-being and cognitive function. So us needing each other as social beings, we need that contact both from a physical perspective, but also interactions. And I think volunteering shifts your mental state from I'm doing this for myself, like a self-based, to an others-based. And what do they need? What do they want? And I think it was the Dalai Lama who said that if you can spend your life in service of helping others, you're going to feel way better. Like that's just the pathway to being happy. That's not an exact quote, but he said many things like this. And I think that there's so much to be said for that because when you see others feeling good and that you played a role in
Yeah.
making them feel better, it really does something for you. So people say, oh, it's so altruistic of you. Oh, it's so selfless of you. But I don't feel that way. I'm not losing anything in doing these things when I do them. It's almost a very selfish thing because I get a reward for it and I get the reputation of being this very kind person, right? So, but I feel really good when I do these things for other people and I help others and I see a change in them that's positive. It's deeply rewarding. So I think that's also in the literature as something beneficial for emotional health.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely something that people don't think about, but when it comes to improving upon themselves, and I think there's a bit of a psychological shift too. You know, if you feel like if you're depressed, you don't feel good, you feel like some emptiness inside, and then when you're giving to others, it's like, okay, I do have something inside of me. I have to have something abundant where I can give to others, and so I think there's definitely a shift, a mental shift that. Um, yeah, creates a very different kind of mindset. I volunteered at a new organization yesterday, about 4 hours or so. We were packing boxes um, for an Islamic organization to help feed hungry people in the Islamic um, community, and yeah, it was. it was a different, most of my volunteering is through Whole Brain Health Initiative, but to shift it up to do it differently and volunteer in a different dynamic and have more people in person. And we had this whole series of people that we were very efficient. We were trying to get 25, massive pallets of the box food. And I think we ended up getting 34 done in the day. And it was, it was a different kind of, reward. And it kind of has me thinking that, perhaps there's, kind of similar to exercise. Like it's good to exercise in different ways. You do your aerobic exercise, we do it in a group, get out in nature and go for a walk, do your strength training, do your yoga. And I wonder if there's like a similar sort of thing with volunteering. If you volunteer in different ways and different dynamics, you get to, you get to help out the cats and the dogs, and you can help out the Islamic organization, you can help out people that want to improve their brain health through online virtual programs. And I kind of get the sense that there's that variety. Variety is a great thing for the brain in general. If you get more variety within these realms of things that are good for your brain, be it volunteering, be it exercise, that just something for people to think about, to kind of spice up their get as many brain benefits as you can within that chunk of time that you invest into to whatever it is.
Yeah, I also feel like what you touched upon was really important, that you feel a sense of shift from feeling empty to feeling valued, that I can contribute, I can do something, I do have something to offer, and
Yeah,
there is a point to my life. Like I do my existence or my activities help others, and that gives me purpose.
yeah,
So I think that helps a lot with any type of loneliness also. So loneliness and depression are quite linked often, and volunteering is one of those remedies for loneliness also, because it connects you socially to other people and other beings. If it's not people, then like you said, dogs and cats as well,
yeah,
or planting trees and like watching something that you planted grow into something big. All of these can be deeply rewarding because you're contributing value. And
yeah,
even if it's not going to like, so this is the difference between, and this is where I kind of question the current structure in terms of economics. A lot of people would like to do more of this type of work where you're helping other people and you're making sure that, okay, these children aren't hungry or whatever the cause that you've picked. But the jobs that are most helpful to like bring more benefit into society in the world tend to be the least rewarded in terms of money. And the jobs that tend to like this is from a discussion with people who work on advertising and games and internet speed and things like that. Like all of these people get paid so well for numbing down the brain potential of other people, keeping them addicted to whatever entertainment, right? And there's a lot of money to be gained from disempowerment, but not enough money to be gained by helping others. So this is something that I wonder, at which point will our human society figure out how to move away from that, move into something where you're valued and paid for doing good things for other people and the world, the planet. Imagine you can add that as an extra line in John Lennon's song. Imagine a world where we're compensated well for helping everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point, and maybe it's just the optimist in me, but I do think that things are trending in the right direction. One of my good friends, he works at Coca-Cola, and previously I always thought it was Coca-Cola. Just okay, these people are making lots of money, just making people more diabetic and just making them very unhealthy. Their brains, their how they feel, and I back in my mind, it's like, yeah, you're still my good friend, but you're contributing to this organization that's feeding diabetes. And then in talking to him, like what he's doing, and he's anticipating, the trends, and he believes that the trend is more towards healthy drinks that taste good, more the kombucha, sparkling water, things like that. And so kind of encouraging Coca-Cola to head more in this direction and to put more in the vending machines and to have more of their portfolio. And I believe that I heard the CEO a while ago say that they were trending more towards water and different types of water. So that's good. That's good that there's at least some signs of these larger organizations that are heading in that direction. And I don't think that they're inherently evil or good. I think they're just capitalistic, and I think it's
Right.
yeah, I think it's just people as a whole, the consciousness is improving, and that they're more interested in things like what we're talking about, and more interested in um, yeah, figuring out ways to both indulge themselves and also do it in a way that's pleasant and and pleasurable. Um,
Mm.
Anything else in terms of Alzheimer's prevention and improving emotional health at the same time?
I think we covered the big ones that especially that are covered by the research. We've covered the big ones. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Something else I wanted to discuss with you is for people that are not very concerned about Alzheimer's, people that are not, they don't have depression, but they still want to just improve upon themselves. They want their emotional
Mhm.
regulation, they want their emotional intelligence, their EQ to be even better. Is there, I guess, are there, I mean, I presume that a lot of things we just talked about are going to translate into that as well, but are there any
Mhm.
particular nuances or any things that you would encourage these people to be mindful of as they approach or they intend to move forward in optimizing their emotional intelligence even more?
Yes, so there are two elements of emotional health, right? There's one that is just the awareness of what are we feeling, and then how can I regulate that, right? So a lot of people haven't been able to work on the awareness piece, which is the first piece before you get into regulation. That requires us to be able to contrast it to something else. So, for example, when you have someone who's chronically stressed, and then you ask them, "Hey, do you feel stressed?" They're going to be like, "Yeah, I don't know, not really. I'm not sure." Probably because they don't know what the contrast is. What is the other option here? How does it feel to be truly relaxed? And they haven't felt that in so long that they are used to being stressed. And so it's just, is it a 6 on 10 stress or a 10 on 10 stress? But it's still stress, right? So I think creating a contrast and understanding how different emotions feel, and say maybe the breath patterns of different emotions, like how do I breathe when I'm happy? How do I breathe when I'm relaxed? How do I breathe when I'm stressed or angry or anxious? So there are breath patterns that your body naturally follows when you're in different emotional states. So watching your breath is actually a great way to find out what do you feel, right? And then to become aware of your body, aware of your emotional stressors taking space in like different types of muscular tension, right? Is it your jaws, your neck, your shoulders? Is it that you hold your tension in your belly? Where do you hold it? So, and which emotions do you hold where? Right. So there's a lot to be said for building that awareness, and practices like qigong actually help you with that. Yoga to some extent as well, especially when you release something, you'll know it in yoga because you feel that, okay, oh, I just breathed into that tension and it's gone. Like I just don't feel it anymore, right?
Uh-huh.
So these kind of more mind body practices tend to develop your awareness. So you know, just by the way that I'm breathing, I know what I'm feeling, right? So that's an awareness piece, and you can develop that through sitting meditation. Also, you can develop it by just watching yourself as you go about your day. You can also learn a bit more about it in a more cognitive way if you're writing in your diary. This happened, I feel this way. Maybe it's because of whatever patterns that or belief systems that I have that I'm holding on to, that I feel triggered by this, even though this wasn't the intended, whatever. So you start to gain insight and awareness about your own patterns the more you pay attention in whatever way feels okay to you to do that. So, recognizing your triggers, knowing your states, and knowing the patterns that you follow itself is a huge step. It's not like a small step, it can be quite big to achieve that level of awareness in the first place. And a lot of it, a lot of the regulation actually happens with the development of awareness. Because as you recognize, I see this is happening, this type of noise is kind of increasing in at my surroundings, I'm going to get pretty stressed soon. I can already feel my breath changing. right? So then you say, okay, maybe I should get my earplugs. I don't like construction noise. I'm going to get my earplugs or get these big headphones, noise canceling ones, and just get away from it, right? So you can then kind of adapt to the stressor if you know what it is that's causing you the stress. If you don't know that the noise affects you like that, you just feel really irritable and you snap at everyone and you don't realize why. Because there was a lot of background noise going on, you felt kind of overstimulated, right? So I think that's how they're related to each other. There's some level of awareness that informs the regulation piece. Just knowing that you feel something allows you to regulate it. And then there are separate regulation techniques also. So I think creating that gap, and this is where mindfulness also helps because you can notice the thoughts coming and going, notice your feelings, your bodily sensations, and you as your awareness is removed from the experience or the narration of whatever you're experiencing, right? So you watch just as much as you experience. So you are the observer and the observed. And when you're able to create that gap, you're able to take a pause and say, how do I want this to pan out? And you, instead of just reacting, you create a response which is targeted towards the goal you intend. Right. So what you actually want out of this interaction, what you actually want out of this work day, and can I figure out how to respond in a way that I can meet my goal? And that's a lot more deliberate action compared to the snappy, just automatic reaction that comes from the patterns that you've been holding. So it's a way to step out of your patterns, your automatic habits, and say, how can I respond in a way that's more appropriate to this situation based on my goals?
Yeah.
So that's where the regulation piece comes into.
Yeah, yeah, I think that awareness is huge, and kind of on a more big scale, it reminds me of research I've seen before where it's people in their last trimester of life. I think it's around mid late 60s. That's kind of like the peak time they have in terms of emotional regulation. It's just they've had so many more decades of time and experience of just on some level, maybe they're not paying as attention as much as they should in some cases, and they really need to lean into some of these exercises you're talking about, where you really take more inventory and you pause and you reflect, and but on some level they're paying attention. And after so many decades of life, that we get to this point where it's like, okay, yep, if I do this, if I say that, if I, it's going to end up in the bad, so I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to do this, and just that emotional regulation that's like kind of like the peak time. And to me, it's one of the things that makes you look forward to continuing to get older and to age. The physical capacity is gonna it's already gone down a bit, but that the emotional
Really?
capacity. Yeah, I know. I can't. My knees, Dr. Jenny. I can't. I played flag football like 2 weeks ago, or no, 3, 4 weeks ago, and I was doing good during the game because I warmed up 45 minutes ahead of time. But like the week after, week and a half, I was like hobbling around like it felt like I was 60, 70 something years old, and when I was 20, it was like it wouldn't it was nothing. I could do it and just be up and at it the morning after. But anyways, the emotional regulation that I've noticed it myself. Obviously, I'm turning 40 in a couple of months, but each decade it just seems like I'm figuring things out better and better in terms of what's going to make me happy and keep me happy, and avoid the times where I'm just not doing so good. And yeah, so I think that awareness is huge, and I hope that we can all accelerate that. We don't have to, wait to our late 60s to, find a decent equilibrium, but we can, find that earlier, and even continue to build and build on that. I don't know if there's any sort of, ceiling where, where we continue to get better, but it's, we realize a healthy, kind of homeostasis, much earlier in life by employing some of these things that you were talking about.
Yeah, I think the other thing that just occurred to me as you were talking about it is, yes, we don't have to wait till we're 60 to find this. We can find it, and many people do find it much earlier too. But it comes with a lot of introspection and reflection to be able to figure out those patterns and then realize that they are just patterns and not part of you, right? So it's this example from a book of that I like to quote. So this person talks about how you were in like a really cold place when you were a kid, right? Really, really cold. And you found this jacket. It's a very thick, heavy, wonderfully warm jacket, and it helped you survive that cold. And so you're like, oh, I love this jacket, right? You just like wear it all the time. And then you later in your life you move to a place where you are so very comfortable and warm. You realize that you don't need that really heavy jacket, right? At some level, you're feeling you don't realize you feel kind of stuffy and hot and like uncomfortable, and you don't realize that you've been wearing the jacket, that really big, thick, warm jacket all this time, even though the place you've moved to is warmer and you don't need it. You continue to wear it, and that's kind of how we are with our emotional patterns.
Uh-huh.
So when we encounter something in our childhood that makes us have to adapt a certain way, take on a certain behavioral pattern or emotional pattern to cope with whatever we're facing, it tends to become part of our go-to repertoire of things that we do, and then we call it our personality. And when we move into a different stage of life where those conditions are different, we don't realize that that jacket is something you can take off, and it's not
Yeah.
necessarily you, right? It's not
Yeah.
you. The jacket is a separate thing. It's a coping mechanism for a difficult cold temperature type of a situation, but it's not you. It's just something
Yeah.
you own, maybe that you can use if you go to a cold place again, but you don't need it if you're in a comfortable warm place, right?
Yeah.
So similarly, I think that we get attached to our patterns of behavior and emotions such that we think that that's just how I am. That's just me, right? Not realizing that, especially that when you start meditating, you start to see that these are just stories that you're telling yourself. These
Yeah.
are thought patterns, this conditioning. There, as all of that is external to the self. The self
Yeah.
doesn't actually have this as a part of itself. It's just
Right.
habits of emotional habits of behavioral habits that you've built up over time that you're so used to doing. You're going back to those patterns all the time that you
Hmm.
don't realize that you could react a different way.
Right.
It is possible to change the way you react. Just take the jacket off. But how do you recognize that and take off the jacket, right? So I think does that resonate with you? How do you feel about that example?
I think that's an awesome metaphor. It's yeah, brilliantly said, and it's yeah, I could see that resonating with a lot of people. Um,
Mm.
something else I wanted to touch on in terms of improving um, our emotional awareness, our emotional intelligence is the workplace. Came across a study that found that people that are managers that have higher emotional intelligence make $29,000 extra per year compared to people that score lower on the emotional intelligence. And obviously, as a manager, it's probably an extra important skill. I don't know if it would translate as much in terms of maybe an engineer or something where you're not interacting with people as much. Um, but yeah, I think that there's no way around the importance of emotional intelligence and emotional regulation for whatever it is that matters to you. If you're not concerned about Alzheimer's a couple of decades down the line, if you don't have depression and that's not on your radar either, money's going to be on your radar. How you connect with other people, your relationship with your significant other, your friends, or there's no way around the importance of emotional your relationship with yourself, right? We all have a relationship with
Yeah.
ourselves, and if we're if we're wearing jackets and and it's warm outside and we don't need to be doing it, then the sooner we can take those off and adapt accordingly to what's going to make us happiest and most comfortable in the lives that we have. I really see emotional intelligence as just such a powerful thing, to a very high leverage skill set and mindset to improve on. And yeah, you've given a lot of really good ideas and insight on how people can go about improving it.
Yeah, I think there's one more thing that I thought I would mention here because a lot of our stress, a lot of our distress comes from relationships gone wrong or
Uh-huh.
interactions with other people, that interpersonal relationships just don't work that smoothly.
Yeah.
And a lot of this comes from misunderstandings. So I think that if we learned how to communicate well and we were more clear in the way that we communicate, that itself can shift the way that we look at our own emotions as well as other people's emotions. And there's a group of people who work on this. They have developed this thing called nonviolent communication.
Uh-huh.
There's a book by Marshall Rosenberg. I think he's the first person to like write down all of it. And now people have taken this concept and put it into management books and parenting books and you name it, you know. So they've integrated it with somatic experience and mindfulness and written other books. But the core principles of nonviolent communication strike me as something that's really important to bring into this conversation because it does improve your emotional intelligence. Because when you are practicing it, when you understand how it works, you need to be aware of your own feelings. You have to be aware of the other person's feelings. And you need to know how you communicate in a way that's non threatening, doesn't use power to control someone else, but that you actually request out of the goodness of your heart, if you care about this relationship, if you care as deeply as about me as I do about you, would you please, right? And so there's a process of trust building there, where there's a lot of good faith involved in that communication, right? And so when someone is behaving kind of obnoxiously towards you, and you feel attacked, the natural or like the automatic reaction is to defend yourself and maybe counterattack. And that's just how a lot of people talk. But the alternative, and this is why I like the system so much, is to, if you're really well grounded in yourself, to look at that person for what their unmet needs could be, right?
Yeah.
Why is it that they act like that? Why do they yell at you or whatever they do, right? They're looking for something that they don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they don't have enough acceptance, they don't feel valued enough, they don't have enough love. Whatever it is that they don't have, that is a reason that they're lashing out and behaving badly. So if we are able to, and so this requires you to be really grounded, because if you feel also very under resourced, you're going to just be like, well, I don't have my needs met, so why should I meet your needs? Right?
Yeah.
So if you have found ways to nourish yourself, which goes back to one of our previous conversations about the inner smile meditation. It's a self-nourishing exercise, right?
Uh-huh.
Other things that we talk about self-care, exercising, eating well, sleeping well, all of these will contribute to you feeling stable, grounded, and good within yourself. Recognizing that you know your own value, right? Understanding yourself really well, really well. All of these will keep you in a grounded state, such that when someone is attacking you, you don't look at them as oh, here's an enemy, I'm going to have to like fight this, but more like, what's up with you that you feel this way, right? And so you're able to give them compassionate curiosity and attention,
Mm-hmm.
and that can really shift the conversation, the dynamic. So recognizing that bad behavior isn't necessarily about you, it's
Right.
about their own unmet needs. It can
Right.
be a game changer in the way you interact with people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Completely agree. I like it, and it's very, very well said. I'm sure just about everyone can relate to those times that you feel attacked, and it's, do you attack back? Do you fight fire with fire, or do you, um, try to, continue to be empathetic and compassionate, even when a time that it's tough and and someone's not acting that way towards you. That's yeah, I like it. Anything else we should leave our listeners with here before we come to our conclusion?
I can't think of anything. I think we've done a pretty good job of bringing various elements of awareness, the studies, and various practices into this. Yeah, it's been a good
Okay.
chat.
All right. You know what's coming next, right?
Yeah, and I have not thought about it. What is your go-fi, Steve?
My
Greatest
greatest
opportunity.
opportunity for the improvement of my brain health. First, I'd just like to reflect from our last conversation, which I mentioned was doing more of the yoga nidra, the non-sleep deep rest. So I definitely did do more of that. I still feel like the most rejuvenating non-sleep deep rest type thing I can do is being outside and lying down in the ground in the grass. Even in our Michigan winters here, if I just got done shoveling the driveway this morning, and after I had built up enough warmth inside the jacket that I could lie down in the grass and the snow, and it's just so incredibly refreshing. And I feel that I feel like I benefited from doing the yoga nidra and just kind of testing out different things and just maybe getting a little bit more, I guess, validation, verification that's probably the best way for me to rejuvenate, to get that downtime, get a more calm meditative experience is just lying down in the grass. Moving forward, obviously, I'm still going to do that, but to build to do something new, I'm currently in the middle of a different a new type of diet. I'm doing a low FODMAP diet, and I'm also
Mm.
taking a couple of all natural antibacterial, antifungal supplements. I was right on the cusp of just barely testing positive for SIBO, for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So I want to make sure that I cut that out and get my gut in as healthy of a state as I can. So, and also that's one of the reasons I'm not doing caffeine for a month as well, is I
Mhm.
really want to,
Mhm.
I know it has an impact on my guts. No caffeine, no stimulants. And so sticking with that through this month is definitely high up there in terms of an important thing to do, not just for my gut, but because the gut and the brain are so interconnected for my
Yeah.
brain health. Um, but also seeking out a loving companion in a different kind of way. You know, I mentioned earlier my 40th birthday is coming up, and just at a phase of my life where having that a special companion would be very very beneficial for my brain health. So I'm taking a couple kind of unique approaches to connecting with the right person. And if I had to pick one, I'd say uh, finding the special companion would have the greatest benefits, and even just the act of pursuing it, I think is a good mental exercise for me. But sticking with um, the gut program is not too distant number two. How about you, Dr.
Mhm.
Janani? What's the greatest opportunity for the improvement of your brain health?
Finding ways to optimize my exercise even further than it is, and managing stress again, still.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to all our listeners, all our viewers out there, we hope that you really take everything that you learn through this podcast or anything else that you learn about health or brain health through your own filter. What are you already doing well? What are you lacking in the most? Maybe everything that we talked about in the program or this session today, you're already doing well, but something you heard in a different program is what what you need to do differently. Maybe it's something from the sleep or something from somewhere else that you really need to focus on for your own brain health. So we hope that you don't just go with the flavor of the month. You don't just, take action based off what you heard on the call today because it's fresh in your mind, but take it through your own filter. What's best for you to do for your brain health is what we really hope that you do. From the bottom of our hearts, we hope you do what's best for your brain.
Yeah, I would love to see some comments on the videos on the YouTube channel about what each person who watches it, what they consider their own GoFi, what is their own scope, and what other questions they may have for us to maybe address in future podcasts. So I think it'll be great to have that kind of interaction and engagement, so that we can work to serve you specifically in a more particular way than we are right now. So that'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're happy to join in on the conversation, the discussion down below. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Brain Chat, and we look forward to the next conversation and chatting with you in the discussion down below.